What do you think?
I'm thinking about our content, what we want to talk about. Okay. And this is kind of, I'm going to back you up just a little bit so I can kind of share where it came from. And I'll start by saying this. So this suggestion came from Brian Ramey. Victor was out in Ville, Colorado last week. He was our keynote speaker at the Rack Trip. And he got up and he did a phenomenal presentation that was kind of different and kind of weird, right? I was nervous, you were nervous.
Yep.
I've known you for 13 years.
Yep.
I've known you as the sales guy, kind of how I get tagged in working as the sales guy, because I've never run a branch, never run a region. So I get that mark. So I tell Victor, I said, I want you to do, I don't want you to talk about sales. I want you to talk to the spouses. I want you to talk to significant others. And I want you to deliver a general overall message. Yep. And you delivered this message that, I mean, rave reviews. I mean, from, not just our people that will tell me all the right things, right? Because they want to tell me, oh, that was great, he was great, because they know the relationship. I was too close to you because I needed to get some feedback. So we did a wrap up of the trip with the staff from the folks that run trips. That 160 over 90. These are the vendors that do our President's Club trip, and they said you just killed it. So as soon as you're done, Brian Ramey comes running up to us, like almost like on a dead sprint with his wife, and he said, I got something you guys need to talk about in the next broadcast. So we'll start there. But first, if you have something that we should be talking about that you would like us to address or cover in these broadcasts, make it easy for us, right? Because I grind on this. I mean, I really try to find out what I think is important. So, you know, that email that I send every night that most all of you get, if there's something that you think we should be talking about, just hit me back in that. How that email goes out, it goes out to over 2,000 people, and it goes out blind copy. So when you respond, I'm the only one that gets it. You ain't got to worry about your boss seeing it or anything like that. So don't worry about anything like that. Just respond to it. Say, hey, you guys in Victor should think about kicking this around. So this is what happened, and I'll turn it over to you almost immediately. You spent some time talking through worry and why people worry, and sometimes all the stuff we worry about really never happens. And the way that you broke that down, I'm just going to turn it over to you, and I'll throw in some Orkin stuff. Okay. But talk through that whole concept, because it mesmerized the folks in the audience.
Okay. So let me set it up this way. I wanted to, that was a difficult presentation because you had the folks yourselves from Orkin there, and you had the spouses there, so you had to develop a speech for both people, both groups. But there's one thing I usually talk about is how the brain kind of lies to us, right? How our mindset just messes with us. And so let me go ahead and describe mindset. So let's go to the slide. So you've seen this ABC, right, which stands for? No, it does not stand for always be closing. I always said ABC, I came up with this, stands for your attitude will drive your behavior, and then your behavior will drive your consequence. But then it begs the question, well, where does attitude come from? And I told a story where there was a leak in my office, you know, a bathroom, and then when I saw the leak, I didn't want to deal with it. And I procrastinated for about 4 weeks, if not more. And then I finally got around to doing it. And it was within 5 or 10 minutes I fixed it, right? And the first question I asked myself is, why did I do it earlier? But here's what was going on in my brain. What happened was something needed fixing, right? That was the trigger. Something needed fixing. And here's how our brain works. When we're triggered by something, right, your brain immediately rushes to the past and then assesses your past experience. Then it shoots, it ricochets over to the future, and it creates an expectation, and that expectation will generate your attitude towards that trigger. In other words, I don't want to deal with this right now. So let's pause right here, Ed. Organize that for me.
So let's talk about like all these new services that we've launched over the last year, or even 2 years, right? I mean, all these new products that we have. Maybe you went out and you pitched Ascent Services, right? And you blew it, right? You just didn't do it well. But then your boss comes in, or Palermo comes in, or Kraus comes in and said, I need you to pitch more Ascent Services. Right. And in the back of your mind, you're like, Bob, when I did that the last time, that was a disaster. Right. Like that customer thought I was stupid, weird, threw me out, didn't like it, right? Yes. So I think that's one. I think another one is...
Sorry, let's slow that one down for the folks. So what happens is you had a bad experience. So when someone has asked you to do it, I need you to pitch Ascent Services, your brain rushes to the past and goes, last time it didn't go well. It goes into the future real quick, says, it's not going to go well. And your attitude becomes poor, and you don't want to do it.
And you don't want to do it, exactly. And even as simple as the drip in the faucet, right? That when you went and fixed it, you know, I mean, when you're telling that story on stage, I hadn't heard you tell it before, and I'm sitting there thinking like, oh my God, I've been there. I've done that, right? I've put the small bowl underneath the drip, and emptied the bowl, and then when that didn't work, I got a bucket and put it
right.
under there, right?
Yeah.
So, but my memory and my memory on fixing that, trying to do it myself, was back in the solder days, right?
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
and like I literally caught the cabinet on fire trying to solder in the you know,
did
the
you?
copper,
Yeah.
right? And so my experience was, oh my God, I know I got to do this. I can do it.
By the way, for the younger people who don't know
Yeah,
what we're
solder.
talking
They
about,
don't even know
we should
solder
explain.
is, right?
So back in the day, there was no PVC. So it was all copper pipes, and you had to solder things, right? And so you had to get a blowtorch, you had to solder, and the whole thing, and it just never went right.
Right.
And so in my brain, I was thinking, oh my God, last time I did this, I had to solder stuff, and it didn't go well. Just horrible, and I wound up calling somebody else anyway. So when that happened to me, when they started dripping, I'm like, but what changed was the technology. It was PVC, much easier. Yeah. And that's an important thing to notice. Sometimes things change, that maybe this time we can do it.
Yeah, and in addition, I mean, the simple one was to send services. But let's talk about even just the drive to bundle, right? So your boss has been telling you for your bundle. I need you pitching more than one service. But maybe one of those times that you pitched a whole bunch of services, what are you trying to sell me, man? I don't need all that crap.
Right.
And so you get that negative thought in your mind. So when the boss man comes in and says, I need you to bundle more services, even though in your mind you think it might be right, you fall back on, oh, that didn't go so good, right?
Right.
That didn't go so good.
And your brain, again, we talked about this, your brain tends to amplify negatives more than your positives. And so the example I used at the event was, like I asked, for example, how many times, and I just said, moms, dad, whatever, has this ever happened? Did you just yell at your kid? Just that one time. It's just like, I don't know, you're at the store, you just lost it, right? Just like, you yelled at the kid, and then you think you're a horrible parent, right? So you'll amplify that. That'll stay in your mind forever, so to speak, but then you'll forget it the 1,000 times you actually did something nice for your child. It's because the brain works that way. When something negative happens, we tend to amplify that, but when we do a lot of good things, we tend to forget that. And the best salespeople know how to kind of break themselves out of that negative funk by saying, no, I've had some positive experiences, and try to bring those forward and not just the negative one. Your thoughts?
Well, yeah, and if you think about what's going on, even just in social media, right? The world today, this amplification of all the bad stuff, either side, right? I mean, whatever you're talking about, politics, you're talking about whatever, it just gets amplified, and it's like, oh my God, this is getting all the noise.
Yep.
And in your head, that's taking all the noise in. That's the attraction, right?
Right.
I'll give you an example. You know, I'm leaving here tonight. I've been down here for 5 days. My wife has sent me 5 or 6 posts that she found on social that said there's a measles outbreak in Atlanta.
Right.
And I'm like, okay.
Okay, I'm here.
Yeah, I mean, she's a worry card, right?
Right.
And then she starts sending me the COVID stuff. So I'm talking to her last night on the phone. She goes, are you going to test when you come home? And I'm like, baby girl, I don't, nothing's wrong, right? I feel fine. So I'm going to test tonight because she's the worry person, right? She's worried what's going to go on. You can't come around them babies. So I'm going to pull into the Cleveland airport, get in my car. I'm going to test myself for COVID. And I'm either going to the cabin to be with her and the babies this weekend, or I'm going to my house in Campfield and sit there by myself for the rest till I got to come back here next week.
Yeah.
Right? So,
but some people get into that mode where they worry, they catastrophize. Like when something goes bad,
I love that word.
when something goes bad, sometimes we just catastrophize. Do you know people like that? Like as soon as you mention something, it's like they think the worst. Everything's going to go really left. And so when it comes to worrying, this is the number, or these are the numbers I shared at the event that kind of blew people away. So I'll go to the slide here. 60, 20, 10, 15. Did you know that 60% of what you worry about never comes to pass? Never happens. 20% of what you worry about is in the past. There's nothing you can do about it, so why worry about it? So Ed, we can pause here and say 80% of what you worry about or think about never comes to pass, never happens, can't be changed.
and you think about all the time that you wasted.
Yeah.
You know, worrying
Dwelling
about,
on that.
Like, yeah.
Yeah, and so we do that to ourselves. We dwell on things we can't change or never really happen. That's the catastrophe piece. Back to the slide. Another 10%, even if it came to pass, even if it happened, it wouldn't impact you. So, and the last part here is, even if it came to pass, would impact you but wouldn't kill you.
Yeah.
So, in other words, the majority of things we worry about either never come to pass, or in the past, or never impact you. But yet in our brain, we catastrophize, and that holds us back. So go back to the equation, A, B, C. Your attitude will drive your behavior drives your consequences, the outcome. If your attitude is negative, then you won't execute the behavior. So for example, if we're talking clover leafing, right, getting referrals, if your attitude is bad because of past experiences, then you're not going to complete the behaviors. In other words, you're not going to do it. which means your consequence is not going to be that good. Your
Yeah,
thought.
and I can't even delve so deep into that, right? I mean, because I think my terminology, we get in our own way.
Yeah.
We overthink stuff, right?
Yes.
I mean, my wife overthinks everything, right?
Right.
And she accuses me of not thinking about anything, right?
Yeah.
But that's how it's worked for 42 years, I promise you. 42 years.
Yeah.
She still loves me, I think. But
Yeah.
but I mean, you think about
Yeah.
that. You think of just simple stuff like sent services, man. It didn't go well.
Yeah.
You know, they didn't buy. You know, and it could be you screwed it up. You didn't do it right. Maybe you had the wrong customer. But you let that experience that you're 0 for 2 or 0 for 3, you know, with sent services, stop
Yeah.
you from pitching sent services.
Yeah. I think if you ask yourself, because the question that becomes is, if you fall back into the past, right, and you go there and then you ricochet to the future and now you have this negative attitude, it's almost like you have to stop yourself and say, why do I have this attitude towards this?
Yeah.
Like, why don't I want to cold call? Like, why don't I want to do referrals? And then if you start like really thinking about it, you realize it's because of past experiences, and then your expectation is that it's not going to go well. But in the majority of cases, even your past has been distorted. In other words, it's not real. Yeah, you had bad experiences, but you probably had 10 great experiences. But again, the brain has a way of just emphasizing that one negative one that holds you back.
Yeah, you might have done a phenomenal job cloverleafing, right? You've picked up a whole bunch of business there, but one time you got to throw it out of the building, right?
Right.
You know, something like that. I mean, something as simple as that
Yeah.
is going to that amplification will knock down all the good things that
Yeah.
happen that would encourage you to do it. So when you feel that happening to yourself,
Yeah.
what can you do?
Yeah, and that's the thing is, I think like I don't think the folks here fit the profile, but I know a lot of people who are just negative. You can't be in sales, because if you're in sales,
Right.
you're always an optimist.
Yeah.
Salespeople are optimists. Glass is always half full. So, but in general, sometimes there's something specific that we just don't want to do because we've had a bad experience. So again, I would ask you to think about it. What's changed? In other words, since that bad experience, have you gotten smarter? Have you gotten better? Because maybe you tried something, but that was 2 years ago. Well, you've changed, the market changed, the situation's changed, the product set has changed, so why not go do it again?
Or your understanding of it has changed.
Correct.
Right? You know, we launch all these new services, and frankly, I get worried about we're launching too many services too fast,
Right.
and throwing too much stuff at you. I think about a new salesperson that starts with us,
Right.
and we got this litany of 30 things we can sell,
Right.
and they don't understand a damn one of them.
Right,
Right.
right.
They don't have a grasp of any of them yet. So they're out there pitching business, and they don't have a good pitch together. They don't have a good approach. They don't have a good understanding of it. They're not coming across competent
Right.
and believable. So they're not selling it. So they fall back on that. Well, I can't sell any of that stuff.
It's an interesting feedback loop, right? Because if you don't study the product and you go attempt to do a presentation, it doesn't go well. You say to yourself, "I'm not good."
Yeah.
No, it has nothing to do with you being good. You just didn't know the product well enough. So all you have to do is know the product well enough, and the next time you'll have a better experience.
And when you ping back over to the other side, I mean, you got another slide, or is that it?
That was it.
That was it. Yeah. So anything you want to wrap up on that?
That was it. I think
Anything in the chat? If you want to throw something in the chat, feel free.
One of the things I talked about at the, I gave this example of the study of 9/11. Remember this study?
Yes.
The study of 9/11 was really interesting. They did a study. So right after 9/11, like a week later, 3 weeks later, they interviewed a bunch of people. And they said, okay, tell me where you were, what were you doing, what happened? Where were you, what were you doing, what happened, right? They documented that. Then 3 years later, they went back to these same people, asked the same questions. Where were you? What'd you do? What happened, right? And the story changed a little bit. Then they went back year 5, asked the same 3 questions again, and by this time, 35% of their story on average had changed, which means we don't have perfect recall, and sometimes our memory is not really the true memory. Now here's what's fascinating. Sometimes that distortion is a lot of negative distortion. By that I mean is you remember the negative, but you forget the positives. Like how many times have you talked to somebody, maybe a friend, for example, and you had an embarrassing moment, and then you got back together 10 years later, and you goes, you remember when I did this? And your friend goes, no, because in your mind it was negative. In their mind it was nothing to remember. So again, sometimes we hold on to these negative thoughts longer than we have to.
And locks us into non-action.
Correct.
Like, I'm not gonna do
that's the big statement right there. It locks us into inaction.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a side note, Brett may be the only guy on this call that knows this, but when 9/11 hit, we had I was saying some grace over the New York City commercial branch, and in the old days, we had drug tests. And they were random drug tests, and your branch manager would call you up and say, you need to be in the branch tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock for the drug test. We would have had 2 working pros in the building, if not for the drug test.
Interesting.
Amazing, right? I mean, there's all kinds of those stories that go around, but like I
heavy.
said, Brett might be the only one that would recall that.
That's a heavy story.
Yeah.
That's
just,
heavy.
Just crazy. Just crazy.
All right.
What
Anything
else?